Raheem Sterling to Arsenal is a deal that excites me because of its unpredictability. Now, there is very little risk involved actually in the transfer, both from a logistical and on-pitch point of view, but there is a prospect here that is by no means guaranteed of a genuine explosion. There is a potential recapturing of a relationship between player and manager, a reanimation of a player whose profile we're going to examine today, alongside the qualities Raheem Sterling brings to this Arsenal team, his tactical fit under Mikel Arteta, as well as my overall opinion on the signing. And there is definitely a level of nuance when evaluating this deal. If in the Mikel Merino scouting report, the key word that we used throughout was transparency, with Sterling, it's unpredictability, but an unpredictability of the potentially transformative kind. Welcome back to the Harvey Gratian YouTube channel. I'm so glad you found us or are joining us once again. And with all this to come, let's get straight on in with it, starting with I think the key question that has hung over the Raheem Sterling debate out of the way first. Has Sterling had a physical decline? Because answering this straight off the bat gives you a good framework to judge a lot what Sterling is as a player off. The short answer is no, or at least not significantly enough to definably alter what Raheem Sterling can do on the pitch. I think we can definitely talk about the exorbitant amount of minutes he's played for a 29-year-old, maybe his durability when it comes to playing across a 90-minute game and how that affects sometimes his decision making. But with Raheem Sterling, there isn't a physical decline in sort of those extreme excessive terms. There remains someone who still possesses the acceleration of his youth, immediately standing above anyone else in the Arsenal squad from that point of view. Raheem Sterling is still Raheem Sterling. So let's dive deep into what that profile really is. I think to describe Sterling as a player in a few words, he's sharp, he's snappy, he's got legs that oscillate rapidly and seem to keep racing even when he's being knocked and tumbled from either side. To help picture him, let's compare him to some of the other profiles in the Arsenal squad. I think he's closest, Raheem Sterling, to Gabriel Jesus, but a Jesus pre his own physical decline. That profile that creates real panic in defences, is unpredictable in their actions, but guarantees you threat and chaos. Where someone like the recently departed Emile Smith-Rowe glides in his carries, Sterling hurries you more. When he begins, it's more immediate and go, go, go. Sterling bursts and bobs and weaves like someone like a Jurrien Timber, but again, his acceleration, that burst is on another level. I think we've sourced ourselves a genuine two-way threat and 1v1 specialist in the dribble too, which is key for a squad profile. As Sterling bears down on his man, I don't think he ever gives away which way he wants to beat you, unlike someone such as Gabriel Martinelli, who struggles at times to go against the momentum of his body that takes him down the line. This way, Raheem Sterling can always unbalance his defender. He can cause panic. This is a 1v1 specialist, a player who can breach and break defences. This is key for our left-hand-sided play. But not just from wide. Where Sterling is at his genuine best is when he's also allowed to dribble and carry infield, driving through little gaps in structures that the dynamics around him can help create. But before we get onto that, there are some key stylistic differences to Sterling's play from the left and the right-hand side that we need to cover. The majority of minutes I expect in an Arsenal shirt will come from the left-hand side and on the left wing, as that is where the first 11 hole is. But as a nominal Saka backup, let's start with the right hand side, because Sterling keeps that two-way threat and he loves to dribble on the inside when possible, but partner his acceleration with the guarantee now of space on his strong foot. Sterling becomes much more selective, I think, and his natural tendency will always be to get to the byline, and he does this on the right side with supreme effect. Let's quickly show you how this would look at Arsenal. I think that slip and slide dynamic, as I call it, we have on our right hand side, when you have Saka and White sort of hovering on the last line, ready to be slipped through, suits Raheem Sterling to a T. His off-ball movement, as I'll repeat, is arguably his best trait. His intent to drive on the outside suits Odegaard's passing angles, Partey's sort of clever slips, and maybe a Jurrien Timber is better suited to combining with Sterling when he plays down this side than a a Benjamin White, being that associative presence to combine and to release Sterling from the half space, to underlap, to create that room for Sterling to come back on the inside, or embody what Malo Gusto does really well for Chelsea, firing across back into the box where Sterling has repositioned himself. I think this left-hand side versus right-hand side, left wing versus right wing debate is a conundrum that has followed Sterling throughout his career, but not actually in terms of what side he plays on, but the fact that when Sterling is confident, his instincts tend to be correct, but when he is low on confidence, he can seem overwhelmed. He can try and overcorrect himself and overdo things and become quite frustrating to watch. Here, the most obvious answers are presented to him on the right-hand side, but again, we're talking about hopefully getting a confident Sterling, and his ceiling is highest on the left-hand side, on the left wing, especially because that is where he has a phenomenal goal threat. Off this side, he loves a shimmy to off-centre his defender, either exploding down the line or creating that space to dart back onto his stronger foot, and the way he propels himself on the inside with such disguise, such a low centre of gravity, makes him at times, when he's at his very best, unplayable here. If he is to manufacture the ball onto his strong foot, he looks for that far post with his instep. That's his go-to. But quickly back to Sterling's off-ball movement, because on the left he can attack the centre of the box, combining the instinctiveness of Martinelli and Trossard with, again, that 5-yard burst, which makes Sterling somewhat of a big chance magnet. And I'll go back to it, this constant threat of chance generation is the big commodity when it comes to Sterling. He is unique, I think, in the sense that he may not have that box efficiency Arteta has called for in the past, but he has that promise of constant threat. And we are going to have a look now of how we maximise that threat in our system. But first, let's quickly sum up the additive qualities then that Sterling brings to the Arsenal squad. Of course, he's that 1v1 specialist, that two-way threat on either side that gives us more of an explicit way to try and break down defences, especially if we can platform Sterling's carrying closer to the middle. There's that dynamism to his play, even if he doesn't possess that unstoppable straight line running power. But Sterling's speed is still definitely there, and combine that with that sort of immediate shooting off or setting into stride that is almost tailor-made to hurt mid-blocks, and also aid us in transition by giving us that additional runner. That's what Sterling can give us in that front line. I particularly like, just on a tangent for these transitions, how he creates transitions for himself, often dropping into the middle to spin away from his man, and there's a bravery on the half turn, I think, and this injection of tempo that we can lack at times, especially when building out from the back, and time will tell the extent to which that Mikel Arteta allows this, but I think the prospect of Sterling using Havertz as that backboard, a backboard who can also spin away himself, is a really nice dynamic. His relentless and intelligent off-ball movement, which again is a massive role in the amount of chances he generates himself, is at the top of his game. He can deal with being isolated more successfully than our other left wingers. He is much more self-sustaining, as for the reasons we've said above. Sterling will frustrate. He will be inconsistent, but leave what you wanted, I think, in a marquee attacker at the door for this signing, because Sterling's value lies in his consistent promise of threat generation. If he could add that inevitability we want in the marquee attacker on top of that, then we're talking about a messiah, okay? Not a short-term loan. So he may not be inevitable, whatever that word means, but he is still about moments. He's someone who, again, never guarantees things, but is always able to take, in a moment, a pre-prescribed fixed picture and change it, make something from nothing. These are valuable qualities in their own right, again, even if we haven't got that more efficient presence in front of goal. But on to the most exciting part of the video now, the tactical fit of Raheem Sterling in Arsenal's system and his role. Because although Sterling's greater touchline play gives us so many more solutions when things do seem locked off on that left-hand side, and he's also going to be a potent addition when we try and isolate our left winger against the fullback. And at the moment, we're very much on the prerogative, I think, of building up on the right-hand side and trying to finish on the left-hand side. But we also want to maximise Raheem Sterling and our left-hand side in general. We want to allow Sterling on the inside. We want to reliably have access to him. So how do we support him in this regard? With Mikel Merino injured for 2 months, which is such a blow, let's begin with the immediate setup options. I don't like it, but Merino's injury means for now it looks like Declan Rice is going to continue in that high 8 role. Although Sterling is a high energy player too, his ability to dart on the inside but also fix his defender makes those Rice underlaps much more potent. Also, for fluency reasons, I still want to add a left footer to our left hand side to increase the speed with which we can access Sterling and make that left hand side tick with a bit more velocity and fluency. This means Zinchenko, Calafiori are set, I think, in the long run for more game time. And don't worry, my Timber fans out there, myself included, I think Timber, once he gets up to speed, he forces, I think, Mikel to play him the majority of minutes, but doesn't have to be, of course, from the left back berth. I think he forces his way into the 11, and he can do that in multiple roles. But what I would like to see from, let's say, a Calafiori and that left-footed introduction onto our left-hand side is for Calafiori to emulate how Zinchenko often free roams when we get into the final third. When he's high and on the outside like this, I think Sterling can attack the space infield and beyond, and without a Merino or Jorginho or Zinchenko, yes, we lack an out-and-out passer on the left-hand side. And if we need a bit more defensive stability, this feels like, again, especially in the short run, this is a trade-off that we have to make. So let's make the left-hand side move at pace, counter-press high, have Calafiori making those arrivals he loves to do and create holes for Sterling to dart into, and then as things progress we can hopefully see Calafiori develop into that more tempo setting department he fits into long term as well, and be a real hybrid solution for us. Another solution here is to have Odegaard floating across more, creating those left-hand sided overloads we saw a lot in pre-season but haven't seen so far this Premier League campaign, and have Sterling sliding off the shoulder of the fullback, connecting with Odegaard on those vertical sort of reverse balls in behind. But let's move to the longer term now, and when players like Merino come back from injury, and when our gorgeous Spaniard returns, we can have, I think, a bit more of a share of the central touches between Merino and the left back, or the fullbacks in general. If the left back in this setup is Calafiori, you can have him disorganising and rushing, with Sterling exploiting, and those intuitive quick releases of Merino's sweet left foot connecting things together. Or if Timber is your guy here, you can have Merino maybe making those more unselfish movements to play a foil to Raheem Sterling, with Timber being that more associative presence Sterling loves to bump passes off to and interchange dynamically with. In the final third, I think Zinchenko becomes probably a hybrid between Calafiori and a Timber, taking Calafiori's threat on the outside and Timber's share of the touches closer to the middle. So there's lots of options on this left-hand side, and there's, I think, a real potential for this left-hand side with Raheem Sterling to become relentless, both in its pace of play and its aggression of the counter-press, become a real squeezing force for us. But also, it's a side of real ambition, I think, in terms of Merino's willingness to release on the pass, Calafiori's unpredictability, and Sterling's constant threat. It's this risk-taking side, and we do not want to overdo it, or I think we never really want to, in terms of Raheem Sterling as a player, we don't want to have a situation where he loses still the sense of rhythm that you have to have in a possessional side. It's all about balance, of course, because I want our left-hand side to not just become pure pace and velocity into finish moves. I hope you can see in sort of the explanation I've just given you how it may be a riskier side in terms of profiles, but in a few weeks, I hope it's going to become more ball heavy, more multifaceted and more fluent as well. In terms of the out of possession side to Sterling's game, look, I'm not going to overdo it. He works really well. He's a really good presser. He's going to be totally invested and hungry. And if you're worried about duels or the size of players down that side with a Merino out, then it's Calafiori or Timber at left back to partner with Sterling. So, my opinion on this Raheem Sterling deal. This is where things definitely get a bit more nuanced. because I think we've spoken about the player and the deal in isolation, but I think it's important for Arsenal fans to contextualise this with a window, yes, but also to really understand the player we are getting here. We haven't bought a player, like I've said, who is brutally efficient or inevitable in front of goal. If Sterling had this, we would be paying marquee money for him. But the fact that we are just paying 100 grand in wages for a Raheem Sterling back alongside Mikel Arteta, acquiring the best short-term option out there with no compromises to the future, creates a deal that, in isolation and initially removing any context from the rest of the window, creates a deal that is pretty staggering, guys. But, and I will say this because this is important to say, be prepared, Arsenal fans. Be prepared to get frustrated, to watch Sterling have a game where it doesn't quite come off for him, to miss chances, because he's by no means a guarantee. He doesn't guarantee us a Premier League or a Champions League, but that fits with the word of the video, unpredictability, but it's an unpredictability, as I hope I've articulated, that could make this deal a game changer. The window may not have maximised us as a football team, but this Raheem Sterling deal is one that, simply put, excites me with the potential ceiling on it. And the extent of that ceiling, well, we're going to find out. I think as a realistic prediction for the season, I think you could have anywhere from 13 to 20 goals and assists for Raheem Sterling in the Premier League as a realistic aim. That is all from me for this video now. Very close in, probably 1 or 2 days after this video, we're going to have a tactical look and a summary, and also a putting into perspective of Arsenal's start to this season in the Premier League, looking at some tactical trends, the good, the bad, the inefficient, and some solutions to that. But that is coming later in the week. I really hope you've enjoyed today's video, a deep dive on Raheem Sterling. I'll catch you in the next one very, very shortly. See you later.